Start, Nadia.
I'll let you know.
Okay.
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 I guess we have enough participants. We can start.
Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, on behalf of Khaled, the chairman of BEBA, it is my pleasure to welcome you to this webinar organised by BEBA in respect of the UK-Egypt Association Agreement. In early December of last year, we were very happy to hear that Egypt and the UK had signed an agreement to secure trade between the two countries following the exit of the UK from the European Union. It reflects the countries' mutual interest in strengthening all aspects of cooperation between them and covers a variety of sectors. The new agreement ensures that both parties enjoy the same advantages that are offered under the EU-Egypt trade agreement, and it provides a framework to enhance trade and cooperation on a bilateral basis. To discuss the association agreement, we are honoured to host an expert panel of speakers. I would like to introduce Mr. Ahmed Ezeldin, Vice President, Fed International for Industry and Trade, Mr. Paul Mullard, Senior Trade Policy Advisor, DIT, Ms. Iman Refaat, Nasr, General Director of Trade in Goods, Trade and Agreements and Foreign Trade Sector, Egyptian Ministry of Trade and Industry. Also, I'd like to introduce the moderator for today's session, Dr. Sherif Fahmy, General Manager, Gage Consulting. Finally, I'd like to recognise and thank our event sponsors for their continued support, CIB Egypt, Polaris Parks, and QNB Al Ahli. Without further delay, I will leave the floor to the moderator, Dr. Sherif Fahmy.
Thank you very much, Sarah, for the introduction. And I would like to join you thanking everyone who participated in the preparation for such an important webinar at this crucial time. We believe that the business community is extremely waiting to listen to our speakers today to get more details, insights, and comprehensive information about the bilateral agreement between Egypt and UK. I believe everyone was worried during the Brexit time and the transitional period about the sustainability of business. So today, I believe we will give them all the comfort and all the information that they need to plan ahead for their business plans. As mentioned by Sarah, the UK-Egypt bilateral trade agreement was signed on December 5, 2020, and it's already entered into force in Jan 2021. And the agreement comes to replace the EU-Egypt agreement after the end of the Brexit transition period. Everyone, I believe, knows that the agreement covers trade in goods, including provisions on technical matters like the rules of origin, the preferential treatment, the quotas, and also the scope of the agreement is very wide indeed. It also covers the trade and services and so on. So I leave the technicalities for sure to the experts I have on board. Paul Mullard, I have Iman, and Mr. Ahmed Ezeldin. I'm very proud to have them on board in this session. Just as before starting of passing the questions to the honorable speakers, just to reflect on numbers, because I believe that the business community is obsessing about the numbers. So for everyone to know that UK is one of the major trading partners to Egypt. the total trade between UK and Egypt during the year 2019, it reached 3.6 billion sterling pound, with UK exports almost 2.3, and the Egyptian exports is around 1.3. So there is a surplus in favor of the UK exports to Egypt. And the top 5 goods exported from UK to Egypt, it included machinery and mechanical appliances, metal, electric machinery, pharma products, and optical and photographic products. While the Egyptian exports, for the business community to know that, it covers electrical machinery, mineral fuels, edible fruits and nuts, and I believe the agri-business and the food, the F&B business have huge opportunity within the bilateral agreement between Egypt and UK. Also, the trade and services already touched very promising number, covering the financial service, the travel service, as well as the transportation service. So without any further delay, I would like to start with Paul. Paul, I believe everyone now speaking about the bilateral agreement and the difference between the Egypt-EU partnership agreement and the Egypt-UK agreement. So I would like to get your views on, from policy perspective, how do you see the difference between the two agreements, how the bilateral agreement could mutually benefit the two countries, the scope of the agreement, whether it adds on more value than the bilateral agreement between Egypt and EU, and the opportunities that the agreement might create to the business community. It's over to you.
Thank you. And some big questions. What I'm just going to do now is I'm just going to try to set the scene a little bit. Fortunately or unfortunately, I've been in Egypt now for 3 years. So I was here during pretty well the whole period where the agreement was negotiated. So I just want to just sort of set out to begin with some key characteristics. What is this agreement? And how does it relate to the EU agreement? So the first thing I'm just going to say is it basically what we've taken is we've taken the EU agreement and we put what we call a short form agreement on top of the EU agreement. So the EU agreement is still very much the legal basis upon which we would operate, but the short 5-page document which we have on top with annexes just sort of sets out some different, some key differences. And just to begin with, is sort of territorial application. And territorial application means that the previous agreement was EU-wide, all EU member states. So the present agreement is with Egypt and with the UK, and from memory, it's with the Channel Islands, Isle of Man. So it's just, you know, some of the small islands around the UK, which sort of define who you can trade with in terms of the agreement. So that's sort of the first point I just wanted to make. Another characteristic is, well, look, if you spent 2 or 3 years negotiating it, there must be some differences. And so the 2 key differences, and just to sort of highlight, is one is around agricultural quotas. The EU agreement allows for duty-free, quota-free trade between the EU and Egypt. The one area where that isn't the case is in some agricultural products where we have agricultural quotas. So the issue that we had to discuss and agree with Egyptian colleagues was what would be the UK-Egypt agreement? How do they relate to the Egypt-EU agricultural quotas? And basically what we did was we had a yardstick where there was agreement through the WTO that what we would do is we would apply a rule of accepting 13.62% of the EU quota, and that would then become an additional quota which Egypt would be offered and then included within the agreement. And that, by and large, I think, and Iman, you can correct me if I get this wrong, I think that's, we stuck to that sort of principle, except for one good, strawberries, where the Egyptians offered us data to say, look, we export more than 13.62 to the UK. And then so we agreed a number beyond 13.62 on strawberries. And just on those quotas, some of those quotas we know that Egypt uses in full, and some of those quotas, there's still scope for Egypt to make better use of those quotas. The other area is around rules of origin, and this is the rules which sort of underpin the agreements to enable trade to happen between countries. So previously it was between the EU agreement and the UK. Now those rules of origin are between the UK-EU agreement, the existing agreement between the EU and Egypt, and between Egypt and the UK. So we have sort of three sets of rules rather than just the two sets of rules. Or we've got to triangulate trade between three agreements now rather than just the one which was previously there. Now there are some sort of changes which has happened to the rules of origin, and I don't want to go into the detail on that one now. I think my key question on that one, I think, is I really want to hear from business to see whether that move from one agreement to three agreement, whether that's affected trade in any way. And then listening to you, to business, to see whether that has any effect. We're very, very interested to sort of hear on. And actually, I think is, with them, there may be one or two issues. We think textiles could be two, could be affected. What we want to do is just sort of hear that, understand what the nature of the issues are, so that we're then information to hand. And then the last thing I just want to point in terms of characteristics is, look, this is an agreement which is about continuity. What I want to hear from you today is, I didn't notice it happened. I didn't know that that new agreement came into force. Because the whole point of the agreement was to encourage continuity, that the agreement was there to enable you to be able to trade and to invest in exactly the same terms that was previously the case. Hopefully that agreement provides the framework to do that. And all of the systems and structures which underpin an agreement, the paperwork, et cetera, again, we need to make sure that all of that is aligned to enable continuity to happen in practice. And so we're very keen to hear from you to make sure that that happens or not. In terms of thinking forward, there are three sort of sets of issues. One is a very legal issue, is that the agreement has come into what we call into effect. We can continue to trade on them, but we need to bring the agreement into force. And basically, the agreement's there, we can trade under the agreement, but part of the process of enabling the agreement to fully come into force, we have to sign it, which happened on the 2nd of December. It is then scrutinized by both of our parliaments. We then provide an exchange of notes between the two countries, and then we have to gazette it, that the agreement has come into force. All of those procedures that happened on the Egyptian side, and that happened on the 30th of December. On the UK side, because we signed in early December, parliamentary scrutiny is still happening in the UK, and once that's finalised, which we expect to be the case sometime in early February, then we can finalise the paperwork on our side. The expectation is that we'll be able to finish that, but not prejudicing the fact that Parliament has the opportunity to be able to discuss the agreement, but we're expecting the trade to be able to just continue as is, as we move the agreement from effect into force. The second issue, which I just want to put on the table, is around what we call day one questions. This is the sort of the millennium sort of question. We all wake up on the 1st of January. Is there anything which is really, really different in terms of the way that we trade? And so the first point I want there is this issue, which the triangulation of trade, the rules of origins, the changes in that. Has that had any material effect on business? And we're really keen just to sort of hear whether that's having an effect. The changes in the forms in terms of the customs documentation, in terms of SPS procedures, the changes which have happened there, are they creating any issues for companies? And again, we're really, really keen to hear about that so that we can assist where we can to be able to sort of smooth over that transition period. And then the third area I just want to talk about is that the agreement is then an opportunity. It's an opportunity for us to sit down with government with business and say, hey guys, we've got a bilateral trade agreement. What do we now want to do with this? And the agreement provides an architecture to enable those conversations to happen. A council, an association council, which would be a ministerial level meeting where we can actually make changes to the agreement. We can do that from memory within the context of the agreement on an annual basis. And below that ministerial process, then we'll have a senior level, a sort of a committee potentially, and we can have working group structures below that. And in terms of how we set up those working group structures, a lot of that will be guided by you. We want to hear from business about what is it you want us to discuss within the context of the bilateral agreement. So we've got lots of scope to be flexible, to do things differently from how things were under the EU agreement to enable us to take that dialogue on trade and investment forward with the government of Egypt. So I think that's what I just wanted to just touch on in terms of introduction, and look forward to your questions.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate the strong kick-off of the webinar from your side. So just to summarize to the audience, so from your view that from policy perspective, the UK-Egypt agreement and principle, so it provides confidence to the business that trade between the UK and Egypt will continue on largely almost the same terms as secured in the EU-Egypt association. So consequently, business in general will not be touched by drastic change in terms of trade and applying the UK-Egypt association agreement. So just for the business to be assured that and stay relaxed that no business disruption will happen, and this already considered by the policymakers and the negotiators while they were negotiating the terms of the new agreement between Egypt and UK. You also touched on the rules of origin. So my understanding that the UK will continue to use the Euro 1 and the Euromed format for movement certificates with trade partners that have maybe mutual FTA with the EU, including Egypt. So these movement certificates will look identical to those currently in use with the EU. And later on, I believe we will need to maybe to touch more on the principle of the cumulation of origin and how it creates opportunities for the cumulative supply chain among the different countries within the Euro-Mediterranean arrangement. So, but now I think I will pass the question to another policymaker, another, I believe, highly experienced, tough negotiator, my former colleague, Iman Refaat. So from a policy perspective, Iman, how the bilateral agreement is adding new opportunities to both countries more than maybe the Egypt-EU agreement. What are the key advantages and the elements that may enhance the trade relationship between the two countries?
Thank you, Sherif. It's always a pleasure to meet you in different forums. I would also like to thank Ms. Sarah Hinton, BEBA Secretary General, for the opening. Let me first thank the British Egyptian Business Association for organizing such a timely, important meeting. I'm honored to be here today with such a distinguished gathering of speakers and participants. I'm confident it will be a fruitful one and will be a base for our future meetings in other forums, because as the Minister of Trade and Industry, we intend to conduct a number of awareness sessions and different meetings with the different stakeholders to follow up on the implementation of the agreement. Well, you have correctly mentioned that you and Paul have correctly mentioned that Egypt and the UK enjoy long-standing strategic economic relations in different fields, in trade, investment, in even education and health. So it's always important to build on such relations. Of course, the UK is one of the largest investors in Egypt in different sectors, including the oil and gas and telecommunications and pharmaceuticals. So there is always a potential to enhance the relations between the two countries and to capitalize on the fact that Egypt has a network of free trade agreements, the latest of which were entered into force, the African Continental Free Trade Area. As Paul rightly mentioned, the conclusion of the agreement establishing the association between Egypt and the UK was imperative to ensure the stable and predictable continuation of the trade relations between both parties. In the absence of such a trade agreement, you all know that we would have reverted to the MFN trade, or terms of trade. So just to give to touch the fact that, for example, the tariffs on MFN basis, Egypt would have imposed on average 19%, whereas the UK is 5.7%. So it was important to maintain the current preferences. The current agreement actually provides us an opportunity to focus more on exploring different ways on how to enhance the trade relations between both sides. You have correctly mentioned that the trade between the two parties is about 3.6, of which 3.6 billion sterling pounds in 2019, of which is 2.4 billion is trade in goods. And this represented only 8% of Egypt's trade with the EU in 2019. I believe our trade has the potential to increase. Egyptian, particularly, you have rightly mentioned that Egyptian exports of agriculture products, particularly fruits and vegetables, have a high potential. According to the UK statistics, imports of fruits and vegetables into the UK was 11.5 billion sterling pounds, whereas exports is 1.3 billion. So there is a gap that Egypt could play a crucial role in it, and the business have an opportunity in this area. And I believe, Paul, and you may correct me, of course, that during our negotiations we agreed that further liberalization of agriculture products would be on top of our future agendas. In principle, you have rightly mentioned that the substance of the UK-Egypt agreement is broadly the same. For trade and goods, yes, the tariff commitments have been transferred. However, of course, the volume of the tariff rate quotas on agriculture goods, they have been resized, taking into account the principle that was agreed in the WTO and the historic utilization rates and TRQs and trade flows. So, except for strawberries, of course, we have increased the volume of the quota. For rules of origin, I would say that it's also basically the same. It's only the two broad categories of the wholly obtained and the substantial transformation is in the agreement. Only the movement certificates, they are the same, but the place of origin should show UK instead of the EU. And this, I guess, has ensured the continuity and the stable flow of trade. You mentioned accumulation, Sherif. So yes, the agreement for the trade between the two parties allows for using EU and other third countries materials and processing, provided, of course, that the working and processing in either party goes beyond a minimal operation listed in the agreement and some other conditions. But I guess this was important for the business community because otherwise it would have disrupted their supply chains. Another area, and I believe this the agreement allows for, is that there is the joint declaration concerning a trilateral approach, and I guess this would be an important issue that we have to discuss in the committee, the coming committee. The trilateral approach concerns the use, for those who don't know it, concerns the use of content of both parties in their exports to the EU. So we will have to discuss. I would appreciate it very much if Paul could give us just, I know it's out of the scope of the webinar, but perhaps just a briefing on what the agreement between the UK and the EU contains concerning the part of rules of origin, and whether this would be an opportunity to build upon. So this is what I have for now. Just answering to Paul on whether we have had questions or issues raised by our trade community. We have had a number of questions concerning the certificate of rules of origin, the Euro 1 and the Euromed. Some countries, of course, some importers, of course, they have the products are in transit, currently in transit, and they have already issued the certificate of origin with the EU in it. And we have contacted our customs authority, of course, to make sure that if such shipments have been made before the entry of force of the agreement, then they would be allowed with no hurdles facing them. So I'm like you, I'm very interested to hear from the business community. What are their expectations, their questions, even if it's not possible to tackle them now for the time constraint, but I'm sure I will take it forward to other forums and webinars. Thank you.
Thank you, Iman. Thank you very much. Now I would like to pass it to Ahmed Izzeddin. As you see, everyone is waiting for the business perspective, how the business see the agreement. Iman mentioned that there is a gap that Egypt has to fill when it comes to the trade balance between Egypt and UK. And there is another statement saying that Brexit could create more opportunities for the Egyptian exports if businesses are able to take advantage of what will be significant but temporary, maybe, disconnection between the EU and the UK. So the UK will be seeking to find maybe competitive alternatives to some EU products, particularly in the short to medium term, specifically when it comes to the food industry, because as far as I know that the data shows that 40% of the food in the UK is imported food. So Ahmed, how do you see the agreement is creating opportunities to the business community in Egypt?
Thank you, Dr. Sherif, for such a great introduction. Thank you, Paul. Thank you, Sarah. Thank you, Dr. Iman. I hope you hear me. Okay. It's a pleasure to join with BEBA such an important webinar. And I think we are talking about a very interesting topic, the UK-Egypt trade agreement. Exactly what you said, Dr. Sherif, is in the right square of interest. I believe we have been in for many decades in cooperation with British companies with a success. First, I would just like to introduce, I'm Vice President of Feed International. It's specialized in food processing. We make pasta and olive oil. We export to all the region, and also we are also in cooperation in home textiles, producing products from linen, which is very high end, and also from Egyptian cotton. And these two items we have been in cooperation for 30 years now, exporting to UK companies with developing figures. But frankly speaking, if we can focus on the last what happened the last 4 months was for us also interesting move. We started to receive more sourcing companies who are coming, British-based companies that also have branches all over Europe. Starting from September, October, we started to receive them for sure through webinars, maybe through some communication from their agents. But anyway, their interest in knowing how can we, this is the topic, Dr. Sherif, is how can we find more cooperation with Egyptian companies. Maybe I will talk about the two fields, the home textiles and the food processing. Definitely, it is used, the British-Egyptian cooperation. Like I said, it's already in use, and as you said, in high activity since years. But their question and their sourcing visits were repetitive, and also they wanted to know more, what can we offer in Egypt? Okay, and frankly speaking, my reply, what's going on? So we have been talking with you since years. What's new? They said it was number of companies specifically. We are receiving our goods from EU companies, maybe Turkey, but we are forecasting we might have, this was in September, October, November, we might have some difficulties by starting of 2021. We need to have new sourcing countries. Frankly speaking, in Egypt, we are in these two fields, beside definitely other fields, specifically the fruit and vegetables and the agribusiness. They are unique with a good historical cooperation between both countries. But can we offer, what is the diversity can we offer? This means definitely a pure opportunity for Egyptian companies to grow. And at the same time, we have to find a way to offer and to build a bridge of awareness to the British companies. How can we know each other more? These are the two main lines that I believe it appeared in the last 3-4 months. We succeeded to conclude, to start to export or make contracts in the home textile from companies that are used to receive from EU or from Turkish. This was the first time to come to Egypt in this line. And also in pasta, we started we registered we received even the British company head. He came to Egypt with his group and he started to talk about how can we make a long-term cooperation such. My question, from where you are getting, they said they are getting from Italy, but we can also expect some extra charges in getting the Brexit. This was in November, December. They receive our goods. We send by air pallets of our goods. It have been tested, accepted, certified and registered. And for the first time, it was for us for sure to have such kind. They were happy that our price were competitive. But for me, the pleasing part was how can we find each other? And this was, I think, an interesting point for me, that we can find more matchmaking goods we can do. And when he came here, also we started to talk about some fields. We connected him with other Egyptian companies in order to increase his, because it was a big distribution company in UK. So on both levels of my personal experience, I foresee and I confirm what you said, Dr. Sherif, that it is such kind of an agreement is like a kickoff for more potential, higher potential cooperation. It's an opportunity. Dr. Iman said that it is a new agreement, which is we try to keep or to put some privileges. We hope to facilitate everything because more British and more Egyptian companies would like to join such an opportunity. This is on the level of our ground experience. I foresee we can grow more and more. The second part is I am also the treasurer and board member of the Egyptian Exporter Association. I believe with BEBA, we might have what is the missing link. We need to more British companies and Egyptian companies to know each other. We need to offer an opportunity for matchmaking, for roadshows, for trade missions, maybe on webinars, on specific sectors that are already with high potential. I think both associations are on very high level of networking. We need to know more about each other. I think the sourcing companies that we have been in contact with, they came out through third party, which we respect and we thank. But if we can, for BEBA as the godfather of the British trade cooperation between Egypt and UK, I think we can our trust is in the right place, that we want more matchmaking, more missions on webinars, maybe in specific sectors. I think this will also be on the interest of the British companies as the Egyptian companies. I think we are witnessing an important potential. I hope we give it more of attention. Thank you, and at your service for any questions, please.
Thank you, Ahmed, for giving us such insights and progressive actions from the private sector and the dialogue that you are already holding, guys, because I'm sure that the corporate and the business shouldn't wait anymore and should optimize the benefit of the agreement. Thank you very much. Paul, I think you already touched base on the rules of origin. Iman also spoke about the rules of origin. So I believe it's extremely important for the business community to know more about how the rules of origin are applied, especially when it comes to the cumulation of origin. As far as I understand that maybe in Article 3, 4, and Annex 2 of the agreement, there is a detailed reflection on rules of origin. I'm not expecting that we will go into the technicalities, but I believe that you can only go through how the cumulation of origin can enhance the supply chain bilaterally among the two countries, and also between the Euro-Mediterranean arrangements, so the business community can have such cumulative cooperation among the different, among the different countries, and then they can optimize the use of the agreement and trade more within the region, not only between Egypt and UK. So I would like to listen from you. How do you see that could be applicable in the near future?
Thank you. Yes. Now, how to explain rules of origin? Simply, I think my starting point on this one is what we were aiming for. When I'm going to do this. So what we were aiming for in the original discussions which we had with the government of Egypt was to allow, as we move from the EU-Egypt agreement to this, the 3 agreements which we have now, was to enable what we call full accumulation to happen between all 3 parties. And that was the expectation. That's what the UK was negotiating with the EU. Now, where the EU-UK agreement ended up was that full accumulation isn't allowed in certain circumstances. Now, let me just try to just give a very practical example of that. If the UK exported a good to Egypt, Egypt then either transforms that good or just exports the original good to the EU, and under certain circumstances, tariffs could potentially apply. Now, our assessment is that we're not anticipating many, if any, goods to be affected by that change in terms of real trading effect. But what we want to do is to listen to business and listen to the government of Egypt to see whether it is collecting any evidence from business that this is causing an issue. So let me just give an example of that. So if the UK was to export something to Egypt and it was then either re-exported or there was value added to it and then exported to the EU, the EU, could, if it felt that the rules of origins were not being applied, could then apply a tariff on that good. So in the textile sector, that could potentially be 12%, depending on the product. Now, we're not anticipating that to occur, but we want to hear if that is actually occurring in practice. If it is, then we can take that information and then we can think about, as it was mentioned earlier, the dialogue discussions mechanisms that we have with the government of Egypt and also with the European Union, and let's take that information and say, look, there are some issues here, business are bringing this to attention, and then thinking about how we can use that information in terms of being able to continue the dialogue. Because I think the key point I want to just make here is that the 1st of January wasn't, oh, look, you know, we've got this new agreement, that's it, full stop. This now is our agreement, and it's for us to make as useful to business and to investors as possible. So if there are specific concerns on this point, then we do want to hear from you.
Yeah, thank you, Paul. I have some questions that already passed from the audience, so I would like to start with the first question. It says, what are the expected targets of the agreement implementation in 2021 and going forward? So this is the first question, and I think this is directed to you, Paul, and Iman, maybe also reflect on this question. So again, what are the expected targets of the agreement implementation in 2021 and going forward? Then that was from Dua Abdel Monem, Chief of Business Section in Ahram Online. The second question, well, it's a bit tough questions. It says, at the face of it, there doesn't seem to be an advantage to this agreement, but merely a replacement to the previous agreement with the EU. So can you please highlight how this new agreement can potentially boost trade between the two countries? So, well, I think again for the second question, maybe I need to listen to the policymakers and also to Ahmed from business perspective, whether you see, Ahmed, that the agreement will add additional benefits other than, or advantages other than what we already have in the Egypt-EU association agreement. So, Paul, your reaction on the questions.
Okay, I'm having to do a lot of the talking here, but let's see what others got to say as well. But in terms of targets for 2021, I mean, there are 3 issues which we got to do, which are the ones which I alluded to earlier. One, we need to bring the agreement fully into force. That's our first job. That's just making sure that we finalize the paperwork. The second job is to listen to business, listen to government, to make sure that our objective and our key target was continuity. That is the key word. We wanted no change. We didn't want the movement from an EU-Egypt agreement to UK-Egypt agreement to impact on your livelihoods. And so that, to me, is the thing which we still need to listen. If there are any issues that we need to understand and try to rectify, then look, we're in a position to do that. And that's why we're talking about customs forms, SBS documentation. This is why we're talking about accumulation. So let's just make sure that that transition process is finalized first. In terms of advantages, well, we talked about accumulation, but actually there are advantages already. I mean, I spoke to begin with about the quotas. Egypt has already got an advantage through the agreement. It's got more agricultural quotas. It's got the EU agreement, plus it has the UK agreement. The quotas which are there now are now fully into effect. So what we now need to do, building on all of that, building on that, the strong discussions and the partnership which we've developed with everybody is what can we do in addition to what is there already? And again, part of that process is listening to business. Part of that is sitting down with government to make sure that we've got the right working group, ministerial discussions to enable those conversations to go forward. So we're really keen within that framework, just as one point, is to listen to business. What constraints are you facing in undertaking trade? Tell us what they are. And then we have a bilateral forum now within which to have that conversation. That's not just from the British side, that's also from the Egyptian side. So this is what we want to do, is we have a partnership framework now where we can listen to you and take those issues which are of concern to you, be able to take them forward. And that I see as the key advantage which we want to sort of evolve and to develop as we move forward.
Okay, Iman, how do you see the future plans of the future milestones of the bilateral agreement, and what are the key advantages of the agreement?
Well, thank you, Sherif. I guess Paul said it all, but just let me reiterate again that one of the main objectives of the agreement was to maintain the stability and the predictability of trade between the two parties. And this was important because I'll just mention a few numbers. Mr. Ahmed, he mentioned that he's in the field of pasta and olive oil and agriculture products, as well as home textiles. Well, if we didn't have the agreement with the UK, then for the Egyptian side, some of the exports would have lost the preferential margin that they enjoy in the UK market. For example, for the home textiles and the clothing issue articles, if we were to trade on MFN basis, then there would be duties charged for about 5 million sterling pounds. Of course, this might not affect the business community because they could simply transfer this extra cost to the consumer, but this, in the UK, I mean, but still this will reduce their competitive edge in the market. It will also reduce the variety and the costs for the consumers in the different markets. So I cannot underestimate having such an agreement. It was important to maintain the trade relations the way they stand. What we are saying is that we are looking forward, and there is a potential for more trade. Perhaps having a bilateral agreement would allow us to focus more on how to enhance this bilateral relations. And I guess we agree with Paul that this is our job in the coming few months. And yes, we are looking for the input from the business community to see if, in fact, there has been a change in their supply chains, and whether the lack of a trilateral approach has affected them or not. And these are all issues that we will be tackling. So just to stress again, this is not just, this agreement does have advantages, and I believe that Mr. Ahmed, as he mentioned some of the advantages as well, and it is important to maintain the trade. Thank you.
Thank you, man. Before passing to Ahmed, because I need to hear from him about the business, again, the business perspective or answer on the question. So you mentioned several times that you are waiting for to listen from the business community and see the challenges and so on. So are you having that kind of institutional dialogue between the Egyptian policymakers and the different associations and the business communities. So just to keep the open conversation with the industry and the business community.
Well, thank you, Sherif. As I mentioned early, that we are currently preparing for a number of meetings and a number of events with the business community, including the export councils, the Federation of Egyptian Industries, the Egyptian Export Association. We are currently preparing for such events in order to hear from the business community and in order to share the information. And I believe that as a ministry, Mr. Ahmed, he mentioned the importance of having matchmaking. I guess our colleagues in the commercial service will have a crucial role in this area. In these kinds of events and meetings, we will be establishing the link between the needs of the private sector and what the government can do to help them. So in the coming future, you will hear a lot about having a number of meetings with the business community.
Thank you. Then Ahmed, your reaction please on the question. So how do you see the opportunities and the advantages of the agreement? From policy perspective, Iman, Paul, they said that they were very keen, the negotiators were very keen about the business sustainability, so there is no business disruption, and to maintain the competitive advantage to the Egyptian exports in the UK market, and to avoid the trading under the parameters of the MFN and paying the customs duties, so that might create risk to the Egyptian exports. So from your perspective, how do you see that?
Thank you, Sherif. Like I mentioned about the advantages, definitely it was in the title itself, when we talked in the previous discussion, is the trade agreement in Brexit, the Brexit agreement created a move within the British companies to find sourcing supplies from other than the preferential suppliers in Europe, because the European companies were the preferential, the preferred suppliers, or the most easier, the fast access. It was one EU before, but like I told you, we witnessed more interest from British companies are moving to find a new sourcing location. Egypt is also close historically in trading as a commodity especially to UK. So it was one of the fast access that gave the move of the British companies. But I want to use your kind introduction is what's our role now in Egypt? Because already the UK Egyptian trade agreement is in effect. It's in our back now. In the business sector, we need action. Dr. Iman were very clear. The government have made a very good and really respectable effort to maintain the preferential agreements and to keep for the business sides, both sides, a good access of opportunity. How can we create now action? I believe we need from this great webinar is to move more. How can we make such kind of bridge to know each other more and to reintroduce Egyptian business sectors who even are basically are with the good advantage for the British markets, or even the British companies to come and cooperate with Egyptian companies more and more. Like I told you, Sherif, we need now, if you ask me about the action, we need more activity. Thank you, Dr. Iman, about the commercial section in the ministry. They are doing a great job, but the business community should move more with more determination, with more hot efforts or warm efforts to get both business communities in cooperation. Introduce Egypt again to British companies. It is the time now, the first quarter of 2021, the COVID, God bless you all, the COVID effect in all the world didn't delay the move of the British companies. But are we moving in Egypt on the same level? I leave you, Sherif, you are our top coordinator, to give more, more energy to such move. We need more Egyptian activities, matchmaking, trade missions, introduce each other, and also to give more data about Egyptian prime industries to British companies. Thank you, and I hope I covered part of, or as much as I can.
Yeah, thank you very much, Ahmed. Paul, actually, there is a question directed to you. You spoke about the transition phase of the agreement. So there is a question about the transitional period or the transitional phase. The audience need maybe a little bit clarification about the parameters of this transitional phase.
Yeah, okay. Let me try to guess what I think the question is trying to get at, okay? And if I'm guessing incorrectly, let me know. So there was a transition period. So when the UK left the EU, and gosh, I'm trying to remember now when we actually left. I think it was the end of February last year. So when we left the EU, there was then a transition period from, I think, from the end of February last year to the 31st of December this year. That was called the transition period. So we'd actually legally left the EU, but the EU-Egypt agreement was still the agreement which guided our trade and investment between the UK and Egypt. So UK-Egypt agreement and trade was governed still by the existing EU agreement. During that time, we then finalized the UK-Egypt agreement, and that then came into effect on the 1st of January this year. So the transition period has happened, and we're now into the new period where the UK has not only left the EU, which happened 10 months ago, we now also have a new bilateral trade agreement, which will then govern our bilateral trade and investment discussions going forward. Hopefully that answers the question.
Yeah. Thank you, Paul. Iman, Paul just mentioned enhancing the trade and investment relation, and I would like to link this to what you have mentioned about, you touched very quickly about the African continental FTA. I know that it's out of the scope of the webinar, but just because the two agreements happened at the same time, they entered into force at the same time. So how do you see the two agreements creating more opportunities for trade and investment? Let's say for attracting maybe new British investments into Egypt, so to get the benefit and the advantages of the African continental FTA, so we can find the UK expertise, experience in Egypt and exporting products to the African countries. So how do you see this?
Sherif, you are absolutely right. The two agreements, it's interesting that the two agreements came into effect and force for Egypt at the same time. The African Continental Free Trade Area is, of course, between 54 countries, African countries, and this is a huge market. And actually, there are a lot of, Egypt is conducting a number of projects in Africa, which aim at enhancing Egypt's position in Africa as a hub for the international trade and even energy. Of course, I will not talk about energy a lot, but this is where we are heading as a country. So of course, this provides a lot of investment opportunities for the UK business to invest in areas such as energy, such as the manufacturing fast consumer goods in order to export to the African countries. So, and it's not only Africa, and I'm sure the UK business community knows it, that the different agreements that we have with the different countries, including, of course, the PAFTA, the Arab Free Trade Area, provides great opportunities to the markets of these countries. So, yes, there are opportunities for investment. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. There is a question about the mining and mineral sector. The question is saying that the Egyptian mining and mineral sector has been in a dramatic change in 2020 with changes in the mining laws. So will this new UK-Egypt trade agreement facilitate the exchange of expertise and goods and services to assist the growth of the mining sector in Egypt? So I believe Paul and Ahmed, you can attend to this question. I'll start with Paul.
Yeah, thank you. Just going back one question, just on the Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement, just say the UK is a big fan of the agreement. We've done some work with the Ministry of Trade already to see how we can use the Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement and a bilateral agreement to further and deepen the relationship between the UK and Egypt in terms of doing trilateral trade between the UK, Egypt, and the rest of Africa, using the free trade agreement as an overarching sort of framework to enable that. Frankly, I don't see that leading to new investment and trade immediately. This is a long-term project, but we are here for the long term. We're providing technical assistance, or we're most likely to provide technical assistance to enable to build capacity to enable everybody to be able to implement that agreement. That is a long-term objective of the UK government. In terms of the specific question, now we talked about the agreement. Now the continuity agreement does a lot. It provides preferential access, continued duty-free, quota-free trade between our countries. That is the hallmark of what we're trying to do through the agreement. But it can't do everything. It's just one part of the architecture in terms of sort of bilateral relations between our countries. In terms of the opportunities within the mining sector, then it's going to be governed by mining legislation. We've had conversations with the government of Egypt on that, and looking at the potential opportunities that may offer both to UK companies and being able to develop the industry. I'm not an expert in that one. It will be other colleagues of mine within DIT who are best answered to do that. But what I would like to just say is that the agreement is just part of the architecture that we have to be able to further trade and investment opportunities between our countries.
Thank you, Paul. Well, as far as I understand, the bilateral agreement is a comprehensive agreement covering all the sectors. So it includes the mining and the other sectors. So I believe it's already creating opportunities for the overall sectors for more trade and investment, or the optimization of the agreement will reflect positively on the different sectors. So it depends how competitive is the sector and the exports of the country. So Ahmed, would you like to add to this?
Sorry, Dr. Sherif, can you repeat, because I was out and come back.
There was a question about the opportunities created specifically for the mining sector, because the mining sector in Egypt was subject to dramatic changes over 2020, regulatory changes in laws. So how this agreement can create an advantage to the growth of the mining sector?
I think in the mining sector, Dr. Sherif, it's one of also the interest of maybe it's not in our field, but I've seen in some discussions in our business association. Also, it's one of the main interests of the British companies. So I think more and more we can invite the British companies to come to Egypt in such sector. Definitely, this agreement is giving Egypt more as a sourcing arena to UK companies. I agree with you in such it could be a very high potential sector, the mining.
Yeah, thank you. Well, I have another question about the infrastructure, whether the Egyptian infrastructure is adequate to support the trade with the UK. So mainly, for example, ports, roads, and so on. So I think this is a business question, Ahmed. So what do you think? What's your view on the readiness of the Egyptian infrastructure?
Frankly speaking, we are going well. We are having a good cooperation between Alex and the Kela ports to flex to ports and the UK main ports. I think it's going well. We have good offers for the ship.
Ahmed, I think we are losing you. You have connectivity.
I'm sorry. Sorry. You hear me, doctor? Sorry, doctor.
Yes, please
sorry.
Go ahead. No
sorry.
Worries. We are not hearing you, Ahmed. Still, there is a connectivity issue.
Good services for the logistics. I think it's going well. Also for the freight, sometimes we ship by plane. I think also it's going good, but for sure after the more regular flights will be there, things will be much better. So I think Egypt is have got also a privilege in such kind. After all the modernization in the ports and in the roads, we are on a high-speed road.
Yeah, thank you very much, Ahmed. Just to complement your answers, I believe Egypt, well, there is a political will and overall vision to enhance the Egyptian infrastructure in general. So that's why now we are hearing under the overall strategy of the country for moving to digital Egypt. So I believe now the digitization efforts across the different sectors in the Egyptian government, including the customs digitization, the tax digitization, I think this is becoming very important in the overall enhancing of the infrastructure. When it comes to ports, I believe that giving the full attention to the economic zone, to the Suez Canal economic zone, I believe the authorities doing great effort to enhance again the competitive advantage of this zone, just to be like a business hub, trading hub, transport hub. So I think Egypt quite doing well over the last 3 years when it comes to enhancing the infrastructure. Even we believe that now we are hearing about the latest approval and the signing of the monorail agreement with key investors. So within 5 years, we will see the monorail crossing different destination in Egypt, and we also hear about the electric train, which will facilitate not only the transfer of people but also the fast movement of the goods across the different destinations inside Egypt. So I think we are doing quite well in this regard. So I think since we don't have any other question, I would like to pass it to every one of you just for closing remarks or conclusion from your side. So again, I'll start with you, Paul.
Okay, look, firstly, I just really welcomed the opportunity to speak about the agreement, to begin a dialogue with business. And that's really, really important. And it's really nice to hear from Iman that that process is going to be happening on the Egyptian side too. Look, we need to carry on these conversations. If there are specific questions you've got, do contact us through BEBA. We're really, really interested, particularly if you've got very detailed questions. We're very keen to understand how the agreement is specifically affecting companies, what your concerns are, how can we help to address them, as well as thinking about how we can use the agreement to enable greater trade and investment to happen between our countries going forward. You know, there's real intent, I think, on both sides to make this a success. So really looking forward to working with you going forward to make this agreement this success, which I think all of us want it to become.
Thank you, Paul. Iman?
Thank you, Sherif. But I just, before concluding, I wanted just to add something on infrastructure. You have indeed explained a lot about the transport and connectivity infrastructure that we are currently undertaking as Egypt, and our great interest in this area. But I also have to mention the quality infrastructure we have in Egypt, which has a direct impact on exports. I believe in the last few years, there has been a lot been made in the area of labs, testing labs, certification labs, and this would enhance the competitiveness of the Egyptian exports and ensure that the products going to the various trading partners conforms with their standards and their requirements. Also related to the transport and connectivity infrastructure is the logistics, as you have correctly mentioned. As a conclusion, I would like to say that this has been a great opportunity for me to get a sense from the business community of what are the issues, the opportunities they have had as a result of the Brexit. So, and I'm looking forward to more of these meetings. And Mr. Ahmed, be sure that we will be contacting you very soon in order to have such meetings and to coordinate with our colleagues in the ministry responsible for the different issues on the matchmaking and of the business communities. Mr. Paul, I'm sure that we will be in contact as well in the very near future. And I'm sure that you are indeed in contact with our colleagues responsible for the African Continental Free Trade Agreement. So I hope that we continue this fruitful cooperation. Thank you.
Thank you, Iman. Ahmed, it's over to you. Business remarks.
Thank you, Dr. Sherif, for such great opportunity with Dr. Iman, Paul, and Sarah, and with yourself. Thank you so much for such kind of an opportunity. I think you highlighted, and I confirmed to you, a very important point I would like to mention also again. Digitalization is a very important dimension now in increasing and getting an active trade matchmaking. I think we should invite through this great webinar the business community to get their products on digital catalogs to prepare their organization for business web. So, as Dr. Iman said, it's more and more giving preferential agreements to Egypt but how much can we communicate, highly communicate? So digitalization is very main issue, as you said, Dr. Sherif. I leave this nice, great webinar with such kind of recommendation. More business community companies have to get into digitalization their business, digitalizing their business. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ahmed. Just to conclude, I would like to express my gratitude, sincere gratitude and honor being with you, moderating this session. Personally, I was very happy, and you added a lot actually to my knowledge. And I believe everyone from whether the business community or from consultancy perspective, we are extremely looking forward for the next steps and to the implementation phase of the agreement, so everyone will be happy optimizing the use of the agreement. I would like also to thank BEBA, and special thanks for sure for Nadia for giving me such great opportunity to moderate the session. Nadia, over to you.
Thank you all. On behalf of the board, I would like to thank you all for a very informative session. I personally have benefited a lot, and I'm sure all of you, all the attendees, have enjoyed this fruitful session. There are a lot of opportunities, and we have to grasp on it. Definitely, we're going to organize follow-up sessions and a number of B2B, because again, this is the business, this is the opportunity, and we're trying to link British, Egyptians, and African, because this is the key word: Egypt, a gateway to Africa. So again, I would like to thank you all, and I look forward to seeing you in another informative event. Thank you.
Thank you, Nadia. Thank you, Nadia.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good day.
Thank you.
Thank you, Doctor. Thank you.
And we're going to send you the link of the session, as well as a comprehensive report.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul.
Thank you.